gender back, right? And looking and thinking about are how we are dealing with all of these capabilities. She actually did this because she was looking at women that were being refused positions in this company, in which the company was suggesting that they were doing everything they can to hire a diverse workforce, right? But what she found is that, yeah, while they were saying they were hiring both men and they were hiring African Americans, what she found is that no, but you weren't hiring African American women, right? And so that it was not merely the fact that they were African American that was a impediment to them getting the job, but it was also their gender played a role in them not being able to have access to that job. And that sparked this conversation about what does it mean to have this intersectionality between all of us. And so when we are thinking about those that we are looking at and serving and helping and supporting, we have to think about the intersectionalities of folks, right? No one is any one thing as we're thinking about our prevention work or prevention efforts, which brings me to the dreaded B word that I want to get to now, right? And that is this word bias. All of us are familiar with this term bias, right? And all I want to share with you here is that bias impedes the effectiveness of our prevention efforts, right? It always does. But I found a way of really trying to understand bias kind of differently, right? Anybody remember uh, this? Anybody remember the Sony Walkman? Anybody? I don't know if anybody's old enough, as old as I am, but I remember, man, when they came out with the Sony Walkman, I was in my happy place. My goodness, I had that thing. It was hooked to my hip, and I had my cassette player in that thing. And for those of you who are just a little bit younger, you see those things with the little orange sponges on the side. Those were better than any of the beats that you can buy now today. I'm telling you, they fit my head perfectly every single time. Never fell off at all, right? I don't even know what you all are talking about these days, right? But I had this Sony Walkman on and I had my cassette on and the light. Here's what I want to share with you is that the every one of us has what I would share with you is an invisible Walkman on all the time. And we are listening to that tape that has been recording for us our entire lives. It has our background, it has our culture, it has our experiences, it has our interactions, it has the things that have influenced us throughout. And that tape is constantly playing, right? And as we're listening to that tape is influencing what doctors Travelon and Garcia Murray has shared with us. She referred to them as their scripts, these scripts that we have going on, right? And bias influences our scripts. Let me give you an example of this. I was working in New York City and in the Inwood section of New York City, right? I was having is it has a great Dominican and Puerto Rican population there, and in it was the first time I was interacting with this group of leaders in that particular group, right? When I went to come to their community, I was scheduled to speak to their leadership and to their broader community at a late meeting. They gave me the instructions of how to get to their community hall, right? I'd have to take the A train, and from the A train, I get off and I get this bus, and then I can't get off at this stop and all of that kind of stuff, right? Well, I was born and raised in Philadelphia, and in Philadelphia, we got one subway. It goes up and it comes down. I never had any issues or problems with that subway. And all you have to do when you're in Philadelphia is that the subway meant that you just couldn't afford to have a car or to get a taxi. That's what taking the subway meant when you live in Philadelphia, right? And so I came with that script. And so when they gave me instructions about how to get to their meeting, I ignored their instructions because I could afford a taxi. I was going to take a taxi from my hotel and get to them. Well, when I sat in that taxi for a good 45 minutes, only going a block and a half in rush hour New York City traffic, at the time when I realized that I was going to be late for that meeting, I jumped out and I couldn't remember for the life of me the instructions that they gave me. I was an hour and a half late for the meeting that they had for me. How many of you will agree with me that that was not the best first impression that I could make, even though my intention was really good? Um, Growing up in Philadelphia, I was working with the community groups in North Central Philadelphia. In North Central Philadelphia, they had specific issues and challenges, right, with respect to blatant open air drug trafficking that was occurring in that particular community. There was a remarkable woman by the name of Miss Burdell McCrae. I will never forget Miss Burdell. Miss Burdell never graduated from any school of higher learning that I can attest to, but what I will share with you is she taught me more about prevention than I've ever learned from any training or any effort that I did. She was a block captain in Philadelphia. Block captains are these folks that have a challenge and have and they're the ones that you don't dare do anything in their area, in their neighborhood, without including them in the conversation. And they are the ones in charge of that little 4 block area that they have to deal with, right? Well, she came to me one time. She said, Carlton, you know what? I like you, but you don't respect us. You don't respect us, or you don't respect our community. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't understand what she was sharing. I said, Miss Burdell, what are you talking about? Why are you saying that? And she said, did you ever once stop and ask us why what we thought and what we think is important and what we is that we want to do here in our community? As I was bringing to them all my risk factors and protective factors conversations, right? Again, not the best first impression. Lastly, I may remember coming across a friend at a conference who I hadn't seen in quite some time. And when I saw this friend, I got excited. But when they introduced themselves using pronouns. And I will share with you that it was the very first time I'd ever heard that, right? At the time that I'm sharing this, right? This is earlier on in my professional career, and it kind of stopped me for a bit. And I'm just being transparent with you, right? I didn't quite know what I was listening to or how to respond. It was the first time I had been introduced to the concept and to this reality. And what I would share with you is that while it was nice, while it was cordial, while it was respectful, while I was trying to be as loving as possible, I know I was jarring. I know that it wasn't my best or finest moment. Here's the point I'm trying to make. I've been in this work for quite some time, and I can tell you, I've always come with the greatest of intentions of making sure that I'm doing the work well. But in each of these cases, despite my best intentions, I, because of scripts that I have had playing in my invisible Walkman, I was not my best professional self. And here's all I'm sharing with you is as you're looking at this, here's what I want you to do here really quickly for me, right? I'm going to put a phrase, and just to prove a point, I'm going to put a phrase at the top on the screen. I want you to write the phrase that you see in the chat, okay? This is what I want you to do. It's only going to take about 10 seconds. I want you to do this really quickly for me, guys, all right? Write this phrase that you see in the chat so that I can see it, please. This is all to prove and illustrate a point. I'll give you a second. I know you're typing. Thank you, James. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate all of you. Thank you very much. I just want you to write what you see. Exactly. Thank you very much. Thank you for all of that. Thank you. Thank you. Jumping to conclusions. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. It's really clear. It's very, very clear. It's very clear that it says not jumping to. Y'all, what happened? What happened here? What happened here? I know all of you all are really, really good and intelligent and all of that. I promise you I respect all of you and the great education that you have, right? But here's what I share with you that happened. Here's what happened here. What happened here is that our brains are wired in a very specific manner. Our brains are wired to take partial information and to use that partial information and fill in the rest of the information to make a quick decision, right? That's how we were designed. We were designed to do that. That's so that, way back in the day, I didn't have to hear or see that bear in the bush, right? But if I heard that bush rustling, then I knew I start running, right? I didn't have to see it. I could start running, right? That's the way we're. How many of you will agree with me that even though you now know what this says, that you cannot not see jumping to conclusions, right? Because our brains are wired in a way to fill in that missing gap, right? That's the way bias works. Bias works in the exact same way. Bias, right, has us fill in missing pieces of information. We take partial information and we fill in that missing piece of information so that in our ways in which we interact and engage and have our engagement conversations, we may be jumping to conclusions as we're doing it, right? So while you all might have been thinking that I was a little bit funny when I was telling you my very transparent stories, right, about the way I was affected, I'm sharing with you that bias affects us all. We all have bias. We all have invisible Walkmans on that we have to be concerned about and care about, right? And what we can do, I can share with you this, is that you can't do anything about the Walkman itself. The Walkman is always there. But what you can do is be aware that the Walkman is there. And if you are aware that the Walkman is there, then what you can do is in your interactions and in your engagements working with communities, you can turn the volume down consciously. Does that make sense to you? Right? If you turn that volume down, be aware of it. You can be aware of your implicit biases, which means your beliefs, feelings, and attitudes that affect your decisions and behaviors in an unconscious manner, and be aware of those affinity or in-group biases, right, that we have, right? When we place more value upon those folks that look like us and sound like us and are more akin to us, right? Because when we do that, we tend to create a greater aversion to others, right? And outside groups, right? Being aware of both our implicit biases and our affinity biases allows for us to turn the volume down on the Walkman that we have, right? In our society, right? So here's what I'll share with you. This is all a part of what doctors Tavalone and Murray Garcia, who actually coined the term cultural humility, was talking about. When we begin to understand our memorized scripts, right, we have the opportunity of making sure that we're able to suspend what we think we know about each other, right? And shift that focus to trying to understand our own self awareness and be intentional and proactive about learning and unlearning certain things, right? I believe that this is necessary for us to be effective in our prevention efforts. This whole approach to cultural humility means that I am committed towards a lifelong learning process of critical self-reflection, that I recognize and I challenge those power imbalances kind of intentionally when I see them, and that I understand that there is an institutional accountability, that this thing is beyond individual behaviors and individual choices that folks are making, but rather, as many as you suggested earlier with the definition of health inequities, that there's something systemic, that we have to begin to hold our institutions accountable for looking at these more vulnerable populations. And as I think about this, I think about the fact that I told you I have my Walkman on, right? So there's a way that I show up all the time, right? Whenever I show up, I guarantee you, I'm just going to give you a little insight to me, who I am, right? So when you see me, you're going to see a little bit of they call me Mr. Tiz, but not only Virgil Tiz, but also I will talk to you about a little bit of Dr. Prentice, all right, from Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and because but don't get me on a bad day, because if you catch me at the wrong moment, wrong time, you might get a little bit of shaft. When you if you come up on me just a little bit, I'm just sharing just a little bit about myself, and I'm gonna tell you that America's dad for me was never Ozzie Nelson. It was always James Evans, right? And James Evans was always America's dad for me. And if you don't know Cooley High and Earth, Wind, and Fire, there's some bridge building that we may have to do for you to be able to understand me just a little bit better. And with all great respect to the late, great Chadwick Boseman, when you say Black Panther to me, I think about a couple of folks, Bobby Seale and Angela Davis, and my father, Arnold Joseph Hall, who helped to build clinics in some of the neighborhoods of Philadelphia for sickle cell anemia.
Carlton, we lost you. We lost you for a minute. I think you need to go back a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Terrific, terrific, terrific. I was just sharing that I think a lot about my father, Arnold Hall, who helped to build sickle cell clinics in the middle of Philadelphia at a time when the institutions, the health institutions in that city, was not looking or paying attention to that vulnerable population of African Americans that were dying of sickle cell anemia before that happened. And so what I'm sharing with you is that culture is a part of who we are. It is a part of the lens through which we look through and engage with everyone. And as we do that, as we think about that, then I understand that when I come and I interact with you, because you may be of a different culture, you may be of a different context than I come from, then what I have to do is I have to turn my own Walkman down, be aware of my Walkman, and interact with you and engage with you. It doesn't mean that I'm any less of who I am, but it does mean that I'm very conscious of who I am as I come and I interact with you. I hope that makes sense for you, because I'll also introduce you to this other idea of cultural humility versus professional identity, which is really important for us. Dr. Fabazi Etra shared with us that we have to be concerned with this vocational awe, this idea of vocational awe happens when professionals believe that 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 they inherently, and their profession is so inherently good and sacred that they are beyond critique, right? And how many of you know that sometimes we can show up in communities with this notion that what we have is so good and so sacred that is beyond the critique of those that we are trying and attempting to serve. And in doing that and coming with that vocational awe, as she mentioned, we often impede our own ability to be able to be effective with those communities that we're trying to serve. Cultural humility also requires us to be aware of the historical injustices that have occurred. Here are a couple of resources that I will offer to those of you who are working with Native populations, American Indian populations, tribal communities, and those of you who are working with respect to the African American population. There are extraordinary resources here that you can avail yourself of. The African American Behavioral Health Center of Excellence is a prominent resource for those of us in our field as we are addressing that. Cultural humility requires us to know about these historical challenges that we have had, such as redlining. Many of you are familiar with redlining and the impact that it's had upon many communities throughout our history and within throughout our country. What you may not recognize is that redlining is still impacting us today, right? In fact, earlier this year, I turned on Good Morning America, and there was Michael Strahan sharing a story about redlining having a huge effect and impact even today among our society. My point being is that as we hear about these things that are impacting many within our society, that there is a reason why, that as we think about the river story and prevention, right? And many of you are familiar with the river story, right? Those young people that were constantly drowning in the river, and it wasn't until we went upstream to find out why they are falling into the river in the first place that we began to pay attention to those upstream methods, right? Making sure that we're trying to prevent them from falling into the river in the first place. But how many of you will recognize that while we are doing that, that there were still those that were still consistently downstream that we needed to pay attention to, right? Again, upstream, downstream is still the same stream. We have to be understanding of the fact that health is socially produced. Health is a social construction. Many of you are familiar with the phrase that our zip code is more determinative of us than our genetic code very, very often. right? And so there are these social and economic factors that have the greatest effect and greatest impact upon us, which is why, as preventionists and as prevention professionals, we have to be cognizant and aware of the social determinants of health, right? The social determinants of health are these broad range of personal, social, economic, and environmental factors that contribute to our individual and our population health, either for the good or for the bad. So we're talking about educational access and quality. We're talking about our access to quality health care. We're talking about the ways in which our neighborhoods are perceived to be built, the infrastructure they have, how safe we feel within our neighborhoods. We're talking about the interactivity and the engagement of our social and community context. All right. Are there healthy opportunities for folks to engage with each other in a meaningful way? And we're talking about how viable is the economic stability within that particular community. Is the reason why in some parishes you have particular issues of real challenges, while in other parishes, maybe not so much a degree. Why? Because the ways in which these social determinants show up within those parishes are different for the members of those communities, right? Our ability to be aware of these social determinants and interact with these social determinants in a way that helps to guide our prevention efforts are vitally important for us to be effective. But I want to introduce to you another concept that I think has some real extraordinary value for us, right? And that is there is Dr. Donald Berwick, an extraordinary young man who at first introduced this idea of the moral determinants of health. And what he shared with me, what he shared during this presentation, is that there are these moral determinants of health that refer to the values that guide the way we think about our work, our policies, the investments of our times in a way that reinforces our shared commitment to speak in the face of injustice. In other words, to be able to act upon those social determinants of health. So while the social determinants of health guide us and can point us in the right direction, right? They don't give us clearly what we're to do. The moral determinants of health, I suggest to you, provides for us that guidance that we need in order to actually make some decisions that we're doing. And what he said in this paper, which I think is highly important for us, he says healers are called to heal. That when the fabric of communities upon which health is depends upon is torn, then the healers are called to mend it. The moral law insists that we do so. Improving the social determinants of health will be brought at last to a boil only by the heat of the moral determinants of health. And what that looks like in practical application, I was working in the state of Colorado, and their public health department in the state of Colorado has really taken on this whole moral determinants of health. And what they did is in their strategic plan, they made sure that their strategic plan, all of their goals, all of their cross-cutting approaches, all of their objectives are first and foremost guided by what they refer to as their North Star, to ensure that in everything that they're doing, what their ultimate goal is to advance health and racial equity for a stronger Colorado. That is implicit in everything that they're doing, right? Which is huge for a state to take that on. But not just Colorado, let's look at your own state. Your own state have determined to make this plan that they refer to as the Health Equity Roadmap, and they're in phase 2 of this. And you can see here that a major core element of this roadmap is they're thinking proactively about what it means to engage the community effectively, to create a framework for engaging communities so that they might be able to work and learn and serve Louisiana's people better, right? In terms of what it is that they're doing. Here's where I think you and your prevention efforts can align with, can begin to associate with in order to make sure that you are reinforcing this, again, moral determinant of health. Why? Because even though we may be all in the same river, as I shared before, we are not all in the same boat, right? we have to recognize that that is different for all of us. So we have to be able to retell the river story in a way that helps us to understand how we deal with behavioral health equity, how we make sure that behavioral health equity is talking about the right of our society, the rights of the members of our society have a right to access, right? Whether it includes prevention efforts, treatment efforts, recovery service, mental health and substance use disorder services, and all the things that we're doing, that we're able to do this in a way that our strategies address the barriers or unintended consequences that happen with underserved populations, and that without having a deliberate focus on health equity as we're doing this, then our strategy development practices and processes may unintentionally widen those health inequities that we are caring about, right? And so these are cultural and considerations for equitable engagement. I'm going to share this and then we're going to bring this to a close. I would say to you that most policies are factually neutral, meaning they're race silent, right? That's what happens across the nation. What probably happens in your state as well. But they are not racial, meaning that they can have a negative or positive racial impact, right? What we have to be able to understand is that when racial impacts are not consciously considered during our processing of decision making, that there is more of a likelihood that negative racial impacts will be the result. Why? Because we all have those Walkmen on. And if we're not aware that we're having that Walkman on, then implicit bias is the default. It's not that bias is bad and wrong because you're a bad person or a negative person. I got bias. I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan and the Dallas Cowboys, I cannot stand them, right? I got a bias against the Dallas Cowboys. I tell you, in a supermarket. If I see someone wearing that Dallas Cowboy hat, something comes up inside of me. I just can't help it, right? But I recognize that that's my invisible Walkman playing, and I turn that bad boy down before I get in trouble in the supermarket. That's just the way things are, right? I'm saying we have to bring that same likelihood to bear. How do we do that? We do that by asking appropriate questions. I'm going to end with these, and then I'm going to have an opportunity for us to be able to engage, right? This is called advancing equity and inclusion through appropriate questioning, right? The first thing we want to do is we want to ask the question, where are the decision-making points that affect outcomes as we're developing these strategies? We want to ask the question, right? What decisions and actions may be reinforcing the status quo, the implicit biases we may have, right? Or the current inequities. We want to ask the question, which actions will best advance equity and inclusion? My point being is that the ways in which we turn the volume down on our invisible Walkman as we are engaging in strategy development, as we are engaging in strategic planning, is by asking questions while we're at the table. And if we don't hear those questions, we raise our hand and we ask those questions, right? We bring this to bear, right? There are all kinds of tools to help us with respect to doing this. The Kellogg Foundation has a remarkable tool to help us in how we evaluate our efforts for racial equity. The American Association for Community Psychiatry has a remarkable tool called the START assessment tool. This is the self-assessment for modification of anti-racism tool. It really helps you to kind of look at things that are happening within your workplace culture and how you're able to engage and think through implicit biases that occur here. And I think Annie Casey Foundation has one of the best tools. Their Race Matters assessment tool really helps with providing tools and strategies that help you with respect to your organizational capacities as well as your staffing capacities as you're looking at these areas and items, right? Um, I'm going to share and end with this. Those of you who are familiar with the late, great Congressman John Lewis, I will share with you, he has been a guide for me. I had the unique privilege of having an opportunity of working and meeting him for a very, very brief moment while we were in Oklahoma together, working with the Cherokee Nation. And he shared this idea of getting into good trouble that has now become the ways in which we now know him nationally. And I would share with you that as preventionists, if we're thinking about these social determinants of health, if we're thinking about equity, if we're thinking about equitable engagement, as preventionists, we have to start getting into good trouble, right? We have to start looking at how we might be embrace approaches to prevention in our research that's sensitive to race, that confronts and attempts to alleviate racial injustice. We have to look at ways that delineate effective methods for our science and the advocacy of our science, right? Because we know the science is valid. We just have to stand up and raise our hands so that we can do this appropriately with specific community groups and community segments. We have to monitor for inequities and ensure that we're exposing communities to opportunities and making sure that we're exposing disparities in outcomes, right, where folks may not be paying attention. And we have to apply pressure by emphasizing that equitable questioning that I just talked about, right? Bringing that equitable questioning process to bear so that we might be able to highlight the social determinants of health and the considerations for those social determinants of health. In other words, we have to begin to make prevention obvious in ways that matter to communities that are highly vulnerable. We have to become disruptive in what it is that we do, right? So, on behalf of my grandchildren, that's Ethan, those are the twins, that's Valentina and Carmen. And here, I told you when they were born, I told their parents when they turned 5, I would take them all to Disney World. I don't know why I said that. That was the dumbest thing I've ever said in my life because now I am still broke. But you know, Disney World has a way of saying, "Here, take all my money. Just just take it all." But when I took this picture of my granddaughters, right, and if you all don't know her, of course y'all in Louisiana, y'all know who this Disney princess is. This is Tiana, the only African American Disney princess who hails from your great state, right? And she happens to be Valentina's favorite princess. When we had the opportunity of meeting her, I took this picture. But when I took this picture, I'm telling you, something time stopped for me because I realized that when I took this picture, I was looking at that baby's face and I was looking at her, and everything about her said that she believed with every fiber in her being that she lived in a world where there was nothing that would get in the way of the vision that she had of herself in that moment. And so I just made my point to dedicate myself to link up with those of you who are like me, who wanted to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make that world a close reality for my grandchild. So I am here not merely because I love your state, but I'm also here for very selfish reasons, right? My grandbaby is coming to Louisiana, and so I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can. So with those few words, I just simply want to say thank you for who you are. I'm going to do this. Let me see if I can do this right here. And yeah, I'll do that here just to say thank you all for your time. Thank you for what it is that you've offered. I don't know if there's any time for any questions. I know I kind of took over for a minute or so, but hopefully we will be able to meet your needs. This was the beginning of a conversation, not the end. I just want to share these ideas with you. I pray that it was something that was of value and of benefit to you in the state. Thank you so much for the time. Paula, I think I'm going to turn it back over to you. Dr. Harrison, I see you feel the hug that I'm trying to give you through the screen.
Dr. Harrison, you mute. You can unmute. Yes, you mute, you mute.
Thank you so much, Carlton. You know, Louisiana loves you. Your information was so timely, and we're looking forward to the next one.
Thank you,
Amen to
Dr.
that.
Harrison. I'm trying to see, I have so many people on the screen that I'm losing my people. So I don't know if Dr. Tolbert
No,
is, I don't see her. I don't see her. I was just trying to look everywhere. But Carlton, thank you so much. This was a really, really good presentation. We have 2 more to come. So I want you guys to pay attention to the emails that are coming from LCPR. We are wrapping up the dates, the new dates for the next 2 sessions on this series. And this is a really good close for December. I think LCPR is closing really good in December, and with the help of OBH, of course, and our OBH family. This is our last training that we're doing. We're coming back big time in January. So we wish you guys happy holidays. Be safe there. Enjoy your families. And email us to if you have any questions. We're gonna do our best to answer your emails during the time we are enjoying our families as well. So if you have any questions, please let me know, let us know. And we are here for you, and we will be here for you next year, 2024.
Thank you very,
Thank
very
you.
much, Paula. Happy holidays, everybody. We'll make sure that this recording is made available and the presentation is made available. God bless you all. I almost forgot. Oh,
Don't forget evaluation.
yes.
Yeah, I was waiting.
I almost forgot. We're going to get the evaluation link. Hold on one second. Forgive me. Here we go. Here we go. Sorry, guys. Here you go. And here you go. Yes, here you go. That's what I needed.
Please fill the evaluations as soon as we get all the evaluations in and everything. We will work on the certificates for the training. If you guys have any questions about your certificate or CUs, please email us.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to make sure that this gets out to everybody as well.
Yeah. You will have access, like Carlton said, to this recording on the LCPR website. We will make this available to you guys through the website.
Hold on, everybody.
Yeah.
Hold on. And where are you at? Everyone, I just put in a chat the link as well. So you have it in the chat.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Come on, I love you, brother. Muhammad Ali used to call that the rope-a-dope, my friend.
Yeah.
We're going to get the evaluation link out to everybody as well, just to make sure that you all have it. But please do that and make sure that all this happens within the next week.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, Carlton, I think you can bring us all together.
Hold on. Stop.
Okay, perfect.
All these folks sticking around, I could have stayed on.